Welcome to the Secrets of the Bible channel. Why Abraham is called the father of faith. If there is a list of people in the Bible that experience God in such a deep way, Abraham would definitely be on top of the list. There is unusual goodness that he experienced as he walked with the faithful judge of heaven and earth. Psalms 34:8 AMP says, "O taste and see that the Lord our God is good." How blessed, fortunate, prosperous, and favored by God is the man who takes refuge in him. The only way to taste and see his goodness is when we constantly obey his word. Yes, it is good to pray, but many times, God will give us instructions that we must obey for our prayers to be answered. It is when we obey the instructions that God will manifest his supernatural power, which will ultimately bring answers to our prayers. Father Abraham is a classical biblical example who showed us that it is through obedience that we can experience things beyond the natural limitations of men. The following 3 scriptures shows us how Abraham responded to God's instructions. First instance, when he left his family home to start life where God would show him. Genesis 1:2-1-5 AMP Now in Haran, the Lord had said to Abram, "Go away from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you abundantly, and make your name great, exalted, distinguished, and you shall be a blessing, a source of great good to others. And I will bless, do good for, benefit those who bless you, and I will curse, that is, subject to my wrath and judgment. The one who curses, despises, dishonors, has contempt for you, and in you all the families, nations of the earth will be blessed." So Abram departed in faithful obedience as the Lord had directed him, and Lot his nephew left with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abram took Sarai his wife and Lot his nephew, and all their possessions which they had acquired, and the people's servants which they had acquired in Haran. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan, where they came to the land of Canaan. Instance 2. Genesis 17 AMP, when God told him to circumcise himself and the men in his house when Abram was 99 years old. The Lord appeared to him and said, "I am God Almighty. Walk habitually before me with integrity, knowing that you are always in my presence, and be blameless and complete in obedience to me. I will establish my covenant everlasting promise between me and you, and I will multiply you exceedingly through your descendants." Then Abram fell on his face in worship, and God spoke with him, saying, "As for me, behold, my covenant is with you, and as a result you shall be the father of many nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, exalted father, but your name shall be Abraham, father of a multitude, for I will make you the father of many nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your descendants after you, throughout their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your descendants after you. I will give to you, and to your descendants after you, the land in which you are a stranger, moving from place to place. All the land of Canaan has an everlasting possession of property, and I will be their God." Further, God said to Abraham, "As for you, you are part of the agreement. You shall keep and faithfully obey the terms of my covenant, you and your descendants after you throughout their generations. This is the sign of my covenant, which you shall keep and faithfully obey, between me and you and your descendants after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be the sign, symbol, memorial of the covenant between me and you. Every male among you who is 8 days old shall be circumcised throughout your generations, including a servant, whether born in the house or one who is purchased with your money from any foreigner, who is not of your descendants. A servant who is born in your house or one who is purchased with your money must be circumcised. And the sign of my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant." Then God said to Abraham, "As for your Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, my princess, but her name will be Sarah, princess. I will bless her, and indeed I will also give you a son by her. Yes, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations, kings of people will come from her." Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart, "Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 99 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, Oh, that Ishmael my firstborn might live before you. But God said, No, Sarah your wife shall bear you a son indeed, and you shall name him Isaac. Laughter. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard and listened to you. Behold, I will bless him and will make him fruitful, and will greatly multiply him through his descendants. He will be the father of 12 princes, chieftains, sheiks, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant, my promise, my solemn pledge, I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you at this time next year. And God finished speaking with him and went up from Abraham. Then Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all the servants who were born in his house, and all who were purchased with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's household, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin the very same day as God had said to him. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised. On the very same day Abraham was circumcised, as well as Ishmael his son. All the men, servants of his household, both those born in the house, and those purchased with money from a foreigner, were circumcised along with him, as the sign of God's covenant with Abraham. Third instance, Genesis 22 AMP. When God told him to sacrifice his son Isaac, now after these things, God tested the faith and commitment of Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he answered, Here I am. God said, Take now your son, your only son of promise, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering, on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. So Abraham got up early in the morning and saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and then he got up and went to the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day of travel, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Abraham said to his servants, Settle down and stay here with the donkey. The young man and I will go over there and worship God, and we will come back to you. Then Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on the shoulders of Isaac his son. And he took the fire pot, in his own hand, and the sacrificial knife. And the 2 of them walked on together. And Isaac said to Abraham, My father. And he said, Here I am, my son. Isaac said, Look, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham said, My son, God will provide for himself a lamb for the burnt offering. So the 2 walked on together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood, and bound Isaac his son, and placed him on the altar on top of the wood. Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He answered, Here I am. The Lord said, Do not reach out with the knife in your hand against the boy, and do nothing to harm him. For now I know that you fear God with reverence and profound respect, since you have not withheld from me your son, your only son of promise. Then Abraham looked up and glanced around, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering, a sending sacrifice instead of his son. The angel of the Lord called Abraham from heaven a second time and said, By myself, on the basis of who I am, I have sworn an oath, declares the Lord, that since you have done this thing and have not withheld from me your son, your only son of promise, indeed I will greatly bless you. And I will greatly multiply your seed like the stars of the heavens and like the sand on the seashore. And your seed shall possess the gate of their enemies by conquering them. Through your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have heard and obeyed my voice. So Abraham returned to his servants, and they got up and went with him to Beersheba. And Abraham settled in Beersheba. These 3 instances show us why Abraham is still called the father of faith. This is because in faith he responded so promptly to God's will. God even called him his friend, not because he knew how to pray and fast for long hours, but because all God had to do was ask, and to Abraham, it was as good as done. What a beautiful heritage of faith that his father of faith gave to the Israelites. Joshua had the same split of faith like his patriarch. To bring down the great wall of Jericho, Joshua and his people had to obey God. This committed him to bring down the wall. Joshua 6:120 amp shows us how Abraham's faith had become a part of the DNA of his seed, even years after he was no more on earth. It says, "Now Jericho, a fortified city with high walls, was tightly closed because of the people's fear of the sons of Israel. No one went out or came in. The Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I have given Jericho into your hand, with its king and the mighty warriors. Now you shall march around the city, all the men of war, circling the city once. You shall do this once each day for 6 days. Also, 7 priests shall carry 7 trumpets made of ram's horns ahead of the ark. Then on the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow their trumpets. When they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall cry out with a great shout, battle cry, and the wall of the city will fall down in its place. And the people shall go up, each man going straight ahead, climbing over the rubble. So Joshua the son of Nun called for the priests and said to them, 'Take up the ark of the covenant, and have 7 priests carry 7 trumpets made of ram's horns ahead of the ark of the Lord.' He said to the people, 'Go forward, march around the city, and let the armed men go ahead of the ark of the Lord.' And it was so, that when Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets made of ram's horns went on before the Lord and blew the trumpets. Then the ark of the covenant of the Lord went behind them. The armed men went in front of the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, while the priests continued to blow the trumpets. But Joshua commanded the people, 'You shall not shout the battle cry, nor let your voice be heard, nor let a word come out of your mouth, until the day I tell you to shout, then you shall shout.' So Joshua had the ark of the Lord taken around the city on the first day, circling it once. Then they came back into the camp and spent the night in the camp. Then Joshua got up early in the morning on the 2nd day, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets made of ram's horns, ahead of the ark of the Lord, went on continually, blowing the trumpets. And the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard came after the ark of the Lord, while the priests continued to blow the trumpets. On the 2nd day they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. Then, on the 7th day they got up early at daybreak and marched around the city in the same way 7 times. Only on that day they marched around the city 7 times. And the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, 'Shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and everything in it shall be under the ban, that is, designated to be destroyed as a form of tribute to the Lord. Only Rahab, the prostitute, and all the people who are with her in her house shall be allowed to live, because she hid and protected the messengers, scouts, whom we sent. But as for you, keep yourselves away from the things under the ban, which are to be destroyed, so that you do not covet them and take some of the things under the ban for personal gain, and put the camp of Israel under the ban, doomed to destruction, and bring disaster upon it. All the silver and gold and articles of bronze and iron are wholly consecrated to the Lord. They shall go into the treasury of the Lord.' So the people shouted the battle cry, and the priests blew the trumpets. When the people heard the sound of the trumpet, they raised a great shout, and the wall of Jericho fell down, so that the sons of Israel went up into the city, every man straight ahead, climbing over the rubble, and they overthrew the city.